Hello and welcome to Comic Book School. My name is Buddy Scalera, and we're here today for our first ever office hours. And I think this is a very special moment because it shows that we have actually built up enough of an audience with enough questions that we actually need to sit down and address some of the questions. Now, for this particular office hours, you'll be able to tune in on YouTube or Facebook. If you have questions, you can also post them to our message board. You'll see that pop up in the chat soon. But if you don't get your question in tonight, we will be doing these office hours approximately once a month, depending on the need. But also, just as important, we also have a message board where you can ask questions and get answers directly from me or from our counsel. And everything will be revolving around our mission here at Comic Book School, which is focusing on the professionalism behind making comics. And we really do focus in right now, particularly as we're working on this next 8-page challenge on the craft and business of making comics. Now, some of you are into comics because you just want to get better at it. You could be a working pro. We do have some working pros who are already in there. They're just practicing or picking up tips. We have people who are looking to break in and maybe get a little bit of side work. And then even other people, many of them might be you, who are actually looking to pay the rent on comic books. And I think that we try to serve all of those audiences, share information. I will be sharing my 20 plus or 25 years of comics work with you. And hopefully that will help you level up to the next point in your career, whether it is just improving your craft or actually breaking into the business. Now, I'd like to take the moment to ask my engineer, Aaron Denali, to join me here on screen. Erin, welcome to the show. Thank you so much. She is our engineer extraordinaire. She was our engineer for Jamal Eigel's recent appearance. You did a wonderful job. I think that went incredibly well. And a talented artist, writer, and animator in your own right. Could you give a quick introduction to the things that you do, Erin?
Okay, well, I started off as an animator about 6 years ago at an agency in Texas. I do a lot of motion graphics, some 2D animation, that kind of stuff. But I was a little stuck creatively, and so I went and met Buddy at Comic-Con in 2019, New York Comic-Con, and helped sort of kickstart with him this 8-page challenge. And this is our second one that we're working on now. I became the editor last year because of some organizational skills that I possess that I'm still using in comic book school now. And this year I will be a published contributor in the art and story department for the anthology. So working on that, working on building up the community and helping people wherever I can.
Well, Erin, thank you for all that you've done for Comic Book School. You've really helped us to take this to the next level. I've been doing this for a very long time, but you really did help me get to this level where we start to build the community and help people get published. It's worth noting that the anthology that you and Ari Rubin edited for us won not one, but 2 awards. And I think that that's a pretty big deal. And people should be pretty proud of their contributions. You know, the Independent Creator Awards is something special to us because we really do believe in the indie ethos. Creator-owned stories, we'll be talking about that a little bit later with some of our questions, but suffice to say it was a 144-page anthology. It was 33 contributors, and I think about 27 of them, it was their first published comic book work. So we're really excited about that, and we are super excited about the next anthology that we're also working on. So many of the people who contributed to the first one have come back. We are seeing some new faces. We'll meet one of them tonight. But at the end of the day, I think what we'll be doing is progressing the craft and business of storytelling and creating a community. So we do invite people to join us on our message boards. Erin will provide that link to you during the chat so that you can check it out. It's free to register, and it is a place where we can have open and honest conversation about improving our craft. So what do you think, Erin? Is it time to get started with our first guest, David Marino?
Well, I would like to give a shout out to all the people who ran the Independent Creator Awards, because we won 2 awards and that was awesome. But there were lots of other awards that were won. There were lots of really good comics out there, and we don't just support our own; we support everybody in indie.
Yeah.
So definitely want to shout out to Rob Anderson and to all the people over at the Independent Creator Awards who not only helped us win an award, but helped a lot of other people get seen and noticed, and a lot of other really good comics get out there for people. So that was a big deal. The other thing that I would love to say is that this is the link to our past anthology, which you can go pick up for free on our website. It's a digital download, and it's great if you haven't read it already. And if you want to make new comics, here is the link for signing up. It's not too late. We still have flash fiction to come, and there's still lots of people looking for feedback and just generally making better comics. After that, I'm ready to move on.
It just strikes me. We're making this up as we go.
Sorry, dog.
That's okay. We're making this up as we go. I think, Erin, even as we're talking about it right now, we probably need to do a shout out to many people on our team: Bolu, Jared, lots of people who are helping out. Rob, certainly Joel, who's stepping up and helping us with social media. We may need to create a rolling credits for us as we go, and I think that'll help us from forgetting the important folks when we're live. So let's do that for the next one. We're learning as we're going, everybody.
Okay, I'll put it in my to-do list.
Your ever-growing to-do list.
My ever-growing.
So we did something that was really special, and we went back to my earliest days of when I was at Wizard Magazine, and I first created something that was called Wizard School. And the original idea was to get working pros to create, to give feedback to actual submissions from aspiring creators. So literally, Mark Wade was giving script feedback to aspiring writers. Tony Daniel was literally giving script feedback to aspiring artists. And I was trying to think, like, where could we go to utilize the medium that would enable us to get that feedback? Well, we brainstormed as a team and came up with the idea of having a script from somebody who's in the 8-page challenge. And I left it to the editorial leads. Can you just tell me how you and Ari Rubin made the selection for the person that we were about to meet, and then maybe we can explain what we did as well.
Okay, so we were talking about definitely having professionals in the industry help out with sort of our newbie people. We had a lot of people post stories for the first time this year, and we got a lot of really good feedback, but we really kind of wanted to take that to the next level and talk to a pro. Obviously, we always have you. We have a couple other people that are in and out of the forums, but we really wanted to get sort of a focused review on scripting. And so when you said that Jamal Igo would be willing to review a script, we said, okay, well, we can't just randomly throw our own in there, because as editors, that's just obnoxious. So Ari and I went through everybody's submissions, and we noticed that one guy kept popping up, not just on his own, but on everyone else's as well. He was a very good contributor. He was a good community member. He was, giving thoughtful, detailed feedback to everyone that he could. And we just thought that that kind of involvement and that kind of really community spirit really needed to be rewarded. And so we chose Dave Marino to be the guy who got the script review from Jamal. And so Jamal reviewed the script with you this past Tuesday. The video is available on our YouTube channel to watch if you missed it. But we'd like to welcome Dave on to sort of talk about that experience. Hi, Dave. You're muted.
No longer muted. Hey, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, Dee. Hey, buddy. How's it going?
Dave, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so Dave Marino, I'm a New York City CPA by day, fantasy novelist and comic book creator by night. Comic book creator is a newer tag, but the 8-page challenge made that happen. Yeah, I've got a passion for fantasy, secondary world, speculative fiction. We were talking earlier about donuts. I have a big foodie, Buffalo Wing fan, a lot of stuff, but all fun.
Dave, you came in an indirect way by referral. Who referred you to the 8-page challenge?
Yeah, so I've worked with fellow contributor Kyle Rose for 4 years. It's amazing. We've worked in the same office that entire time, and we never actually worked together because our departments are just too separate. But we were talking one day, I think it was at a holiday party. I mentioned something about maybe it was Ed Brubaker's Captain America run, and we went from there. And 4 years later, and a lot of internal company slack, Kyle said, "Hey, I know you write novels. Like, would you want to do this 8-page challenge with me? I'll draw you, right?" And I was like, "Sure, let's do it." And that's where our story Time Out came to be.
That's great. It's so nice when people who are sharing interest bring someone else in, and I think that's the spirit of things. When you think about how rare it is, what we all pursue, our passions, it's so important to talk about it, to find new people, to bring them in and say, yeah, it's okay, come on in. It's a nice place. I've admired Kyle's work for many years. He had been coming to my panels for years and has done some really good mini comics. Very talented guy. He's part of the Comic Book School Council, and we really appreciate everything he does. And we appreciate that he brought you in to participate. Now, the reason we had selected you, or the editorial team actually had selected you, is because you were active on the boards and you captured the spirit of what we were trying to accomplish. So we asked you to provide a script,
Mm-hmm.
and then we had Jamal Eigel review it in advance, and then Jamal was ready with the script, and then Jamal and I got on. We discussed your script overall, page by page, formatting, design, layout, and then Jamal even went and thumbnailed one of the pages. That video is available on YouTube, and we'll provide the link within the show notes. But Dave, what was it like? I was actually, even during it, you could hear me say, like, Dave, like, don't worry, it was a good story. We're just being really critical because we wanted to give super strong feedback.
Yeah.
But tell me, what was it like to hear your script discussed by us?
It was great, honestly. And I've been in enough peer feedback groups kind of on the novel side to know that when you get feedback, you can't take it personally. It's about the story. It's not about you. So, and oftentimes, and you don't have to agree with everything, but there were many instances where I was watching the stream. Was that Tuesday night, Wednesday night, whenever it was? And Jamal came up with a recommendation. It was when you guys were talking about page 2, which I know was very confusing. When Jamal broke down, it's like, this is how you number it. And I was like, of course that's how you number it. That makes sense. And there was another instance when Jamal was talking about kind of one of the characters moving closer to the door. And I'm like, of course, that's better. That's better than what I came up with. And it's nailing what I'm going for as well. So,
right.
As a creator, you have that thing you're trying to hit. And sometimes somebody comes with a better way to get at that same thing. And that's when it's like, oh yeah, this is feedback I should take.
And when you finally heard all the feedback, and I agree with you, you don't have to take the feedback. You should listen to it, certainly, but you're in charge of your story, and ultimately it's your name on it. What feedback did you take, and what changes did you make?
Well, Kyle and I still have to kind of talk about it because I don't want to make any changes without his go ahead. I know he started to thumbnail an earlier version, and he wanted to get his version down first, and then we'll probably take another look at it. I definitely it's interesting because Kyle did a version of page 2 that I've seen that's really cool, and it does it in a different way. I was equally impressed, frankly, more impressed with Jamal's great motion to the pages. But there was, I think it's page 7 of my script, which is a kind of supposed to convey a passage of time. And Jamal said, this is just boring to look at. And when Jamal said that, it's like, of course it's boring to look at. Like, I'm a writer, I'm not thinking in that space. And Jamal's right. And then I kind of came up with a way to mirror an earlier page in that page. And then I saw what Kyle did in the thumbnails, and he found a way to use that, a visual that how I described it was actually pretty boring, and he did it in a way that was pretty exciting. So now I'm kind of like, oh, I don't know which way we're going to go with this. So it's still up in the air, but it's definitely like what makes the story better. And it's not about ego. It's like it's, Jamal knows what he's doing. He's been doing this for years. I've been doing this for weeks. So when you got someone with that kind of caliber, talent behind him, you listen.
Yeah, and you do listen. You listen. You digest what you want to, and then, like I said, at the end of the day, it's your name on the story.
Yeah.
And what you have to do is say, okay, what does that mean to me? And then how do I reflect the best parts of those recommendations into the story? And I'll tell you, as a professional writer, I do the same thing. I will receive the feedback, and sometimes someone will just have a better idea than what mine was, and then I incorporate it. I mean, in the end, the fan's not like, oh, did so and so give that idea? They just want to read a good story. So, you have to deliver the best possible story. Doesn't matter where the idea comes from. Maybe you make an acknowledgement in the credit box, hey, special thanks. But at the end of the day, it's your work. And, we're really glad that this worked for you, because we wanted to see, as a proof of concept, if this would work. Would you recommend this to other writers?
Absolutely. I think it's sometimes you don't know what you have, and you don't know what you don't have oftentimes when you're writing a script. So having someone kind of come in with a fresh eye and being able to analyze what you were going for. And there's also like, oh, did I hit the target I was aiming at? And having someone like Jamal come in, and it's like, oh, that did work. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, this worked and that didn't work, is invaluable. Because as a creator, I feel like you don't always know what kind of comes out of the process. You know what you're going for, but whether or not you hit that target, that's what other people are for.
Yeah, and Jamal is a perfect example. He is a writer, he's an artist, he's an editor, and he'll be actually joining us next week. We'll be having Jamal Eigel and Tom Pyre joining us from Ahoy Comics to talk about everything from creating creator-owned books to submitting to publishers like Ahoy. And Tom Pyre has been writing in the industry for decades. So I think you'll get another round of great advice and inspiration in next week's show. But Aaron, did we miss anything? Was there anything you wanted to add before we went on to the next part of the show?
I just had one quick question for Dave. Dave, because you were very active on the boards, it's kind of why Ari and I chose you for this review. And we just kind of wanted to thank you for being there for everyone else in the community. What do you think is sort of the best thing about being in the community and in comic book school? Like what do you get out of it?
I think it's just it's a place to experiment, and to be honest, like the promise that something you make will get published is worth a lot. I'm not going to pretend it isn't, but just that it is a place where I can't draw, I can write, I can't draw, and just knowing it's like, oh, something's gonna come of this, just to know that something will materialize. It's not just gonna be this idea in my head. Something real is gonna come of it, and that's invaluable. Just to know that what we're all making together and making better together, it's going to exist. And that's what really counts.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, a good question, Aaron. And David, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on the message boards, and really look forward to seeing what that final piece of work by you and Kyle looks like. So thank you so much. Keep up the great work, and stay happy on those message boards.
Thanks for joining us tonight.
Bye.
Oh, that was nice, Aaron.
Back to you, buddy.
Yeah, that was nice. I feel like David is a really nice guy, and you guys picked a good one. Like, you picked a good script. You picked somebody who had the community spirit, and it was nice because he's written in other mediums before, so he's used to thinking about story, and now he's thinking about story in a different medium. And I thought that was very, very interesting about David.
Yeah, Ari knows how to pick them.
So, speaking of picking them, we pulled some questions together, and you have them in the message boards. Now, I will refresh the message boards. Let's start from the top.
Okay.
All right. So within our forums, I've opened up my office hours the way a teacher might. And you go into office hours to ask questions. First question is, do you, meaning me, have any plans to print these anthologies we are making as the primary publisher Or do you have someone you recommend if we publish it ourselves, even if it's our own story? Okay, so it's a really fair question.
Okay.
I honestly am not structured for publishing. And while I'm more than happy to put a digital download, you can see even the challenge of getting it up as a digital download for Comixology. I think going toward a print anthology would have to be something that would go through the community. We have
Okay.
talked about kickstarting it together, at which point I would still be very happy to lead that, and we could use the comic book school equity and brand. Um, However, we don't want to take away from the mission of educating people. We did get people published. We were very happy to get them published and, get those stories out there, which everybody owns their own intellectual property and stories. They can take them anywhere they want. They can take it to a different publisher as part of something else.
Mhm.
The group can self-publish it without any permission or even acknowledgement of us. We have considered, or I should say, I have considered partnering in the way that Andy Schmidt has partnered with certain publishers to put short runs together.
Okay.
So we can look at short runs with a publisher. I've had a couple conversations informally, just hey, maybe we'll do something. And then we've also talked together about kickstarting, where we have a limited number, where each person says, well, I want 20 copies. And then you're quite literally kickstarting and crowdfunding just enough so you can print enough for cons.
Okay.
So since we don't have any cons coming up, it isn't at the top of my list right now. Getting the next wave of 8-page stories out is, so it's not my focus. However, if the community says we really want this, and we see that percolating up on the message boards, I think the council would have to get together and say, is this a place where we want to spend time? What are your thoughts?
I kind of agree with you. I think comic book school has so many different things we could do, but we've really only done the one anthology. I think getting 2 under our belt, or even 3 before we start pushing on to the next thing, would be a really good idea. I do strongly encourage that once cons start back, that people do get one of their stories, either this one, the next one, whatever, published, so that you have something in your hands, so you kind of know what that is, that there's a process to print. I worked in print that you don't get by doing a digital download. And digital downloads there is a production process of that as well, of getting the website and getting it up and, processing and making sure that it's the right specs. But it's a whole different ball of wax for print, because once it's on the page, it has to be right. And it's not as easy to upload a different PDF if your resolution is wrong, So I know, production problems. Anyway, my point is, I really think that everyone who works on this should eventually have something in their hand. And whether that comes from us or whether that comes from them going somewhere and getting their story printed, it's something that I strongly suggest everybody does, but maybe not right away.
I agree. Actually, there's a real question that just came in. Hold on that 1 second, because I want to just close this out for real quick. One thing that I'm pretty adamant about is practicing and failing in private.
Yes.
And I always say the rule of 10, which is don't publish any of your first 10 stories. This is a different scenario, right? We are publishing a digital download. Now, I know some people are in a big rush to get their first work out there, but if you were to take your 8-page story and, go to Kinko's, staple it, and hand it out as a portfolio piece, that's okay. Asking people for money for it is a whole different scenario.
Oh, and I agree with you on that. I don't think we should be printing this in mass amounts and trying to sell it at our local comic book store.
Right.
I'm thinking of this as the same learning experience as making the comic. Part of making a comic and learning that experience is understanding what it takes to print one. And that means doing it yourself, making a run of 10, maybe 20, if you can even get that low, in a small, like keep them for yourself or hand them out to your family sort of way, not in a sell it sort of way. Because again, your first printing is not going to go right.
No.
And that's okay. It should be a learning experience. There's a lot of people that they came to me with their first thing and they were like, oh, we printed it the wrong size. And so it was sideways, or they because the printers are going to print what you give them. You're going to do a print proof check and they're going to say, is it right? You're going to say, yes, they're going to print it. Done. You don't get your money back. You know, for them, once they deliver the product, it's good. So if you print something in, say, RGB, which is a digital format, colors, and they print it CMYK, which is how things get printed, and your colors are screwy, that's a lesson learned. And so that's why I think everyone should do it. Now, I don't think you should invest thousands of dollars in your first 7 stories, 10 stories, 20 stories until you've done enough small runs at a small cost, or even, like you said, go into FedEx, go into Kinko's, you know, go into your local, you know, library shop that's got a nice printer, maybe even in your office, and printing 1 or 2 for yourself to see how they come out, because it's an experience. And I think that once you've done that experience with some of your early work, that once you get to the better work, not only are you going to produce it with the knowledge of how it's going to be printed, which is something I don't think a lot of us did this first time around, but also you're going to look at how your pages lay out and how, you know, your colors look and what pops on the page, which we wouldn't have done before. I think it gives you another layer of education. So I'm not talking about like, yeah, I printed 700 copies of my first brand new comic that I put in the anthology and I'm going to sell them for $7 a pop. No. Do another learning experience. Take your first comic, go to Kinko's, print it, see what it looks like.
Yeah, and this is particularly true for writers. You know, as an artist, you can see if your art is evolving and it's very apparent on the page. But what we don't want writers to do is to turn somebody off. If I read something by a writer and it's bad and a bad experience for me, I am not likely to read another piece by that person. And it's okay if your first work isn't seen by an editor or by an audience. It's okay if your 5th piece, by about 10, I know that sounds like a lot, but that's not even a year of monthly comics. So, you know, you want to practice as much as you can and really get good at your craft. And then if you want to go back and retell those stories, it's okay. But more important, you have to come out strong because your name is your brand. And you don't want to water down your brand with work that isn't up to quality. So don't be in a rush is the point. This is a good time to practice. We did have something from someone named Alexander.
Yes. And to add to that note, as an artist, I once did a brochure for a friend of mine in graphic design. I had it printed on black paper. I did a lot of metallic things, and then I gave them the wrong spec at the printer, and they literally printed it sideways.
Well, that wasn't good. I think we just lost Erin. I hope we're still live. I think we're still live. Yes, we are still live. I think Erin bumped herself off. All right, Alexander had a question. If we as a creator do self-publish our own stories, how would we give CBS any attribution if we want to? Welcome back.
Sorry, internet problems. Go
These
ahead.
things happen. You do not have to give any attribution if they are your stories. I am grateful if you do. The website is comicbookschool.com, and your editors are A.A. Rubin and Denali. Certainly, if you want to mention them, you can. But ultimately, at the end of the day, this is a learning experience for you that we provide free of charge and no strings attached. So, you know, I do hope that you guys move on to further careers. And when you're up there winning an Eisner, you remember some of us, be like, to my friends. But yeah, that's how you give us attribution. Go win some awards. All right. So we'll continue on. Clarify the 8 pages plus cover and flash fiction requirements. Okay, so there is a link which we can provide in the show notes. It's on a landing page called the Creative Prompt. So it's 8 pages of sequential art. And in the first anthology, we thought, okay, it's 8 pages. And then some people turned in a 9th, and it gave us a nice interstitial page. Now, we had always intended to have an interstitial page because one of my pet peeves is when an anthology ends and you don't know when the next story begins because it doesn't have a clear title on it. We had an interstitial break page. Then a couple people provided us with some really nice what they would consider cover pages. And we thought, well, why not give everybody that same opportunity, right? If you're creating it anyway, you've done 8 pages, so there is an 8-page spec, and then there's a separate workflow toward the end where you can actually create the cover. You have a little extra time for that, and it gives you time to insert a logo. Your interstitial page will have all of your credits. We want you to know we will be covering it up with the name credits with your creators and also your social media handles if you have any. But we really want you to be able to have a cover to give you that practice because you'll some point in your career maybe be asked to do a cover. Same thing goes with flash fiction, although I believe our editor of flash fiction increased the word count. There are 2 different options. Again, the details are on the website, which Aaron will share. You can either do a 300 to 500 word flash fiction or a 750 to 1,000 word flash fiction. The smaller one will have 1 full page illustration, and the larger one will have 2 full page illustrations. So for those of you who are wondering what flash fiction is, as I was wondering when I had first heard of it from our editor, Ari Rubin, it's just short fiction. It's just very beginning, middle, and end. It can be a small, short piece with a O. Henry twist. It can just be a slice of life moment. It could be almost anything. But at the end of the day, what you wanted to do was just create new opportunities for people. Again, our editor, Ari Rubin, happens to be a particularly good prose writer, made the suggestion and then wrote a terrific prose piece, and then had his artist, Mike Ponce, create a beautiful illustration. Aaron, you did as well. Like you quite literally controlled the whole thing. You wrote your prose piece and you provided the illustration, and it sort of got part of this story world that you had been talking about for a long time started. And again, you own your own IP. You can continue the story wherever you want. You could take it somewhere else. But what was it like sitting down and taking this epic story that you had in your mind and trying to put it into something flashy, flash fiction-y?
It was actually quite difficult. Everyone thinks that if you have to write less words, that it's somehow easier, but it's actually harder because you can't prattle on about things for pages and pages. You have to get your point across quickly, and you have to be clear, and you have to be concise. And brevity is the soul of wit doesn't even begin to tell you how stressful it is when you're trying to get a point across and you're like, I mean, you can hear me talking. I just keep going and going and going. Imagine trying to read that in, 500 words, 1,000 words. It's much more difficult to be concise and to really give a story to the reader in as little words as possible. It's a challenge. It really is a challenge. And I struggled with it. But Ari was a great help. Kathy, our writing coach, who is occasionally on the forum, she was a great help. I had a lot of help from a lot of people, not only picking the right part of the story to use, but also to really communicate it clearly.
I would like to just call out my close personal friend since I don't know, like 4th or 5th grade, Jerry Barbara, just ping me there. If you have a great idea for a comic but can't write for poop, and you ask your friend for years to write it, is there a group that might? He's busted my chops because he's got a couple of great stories that he's been after me to write, but I have written him into virtually every comic, including Apocalypse Boulevard and 7 Days to Fame. So that's
a guilty conscience kind of thing, buddy.
That is a guilty conscience. One of my closest friends in life, and I will honor my commitment before I die to write his story. So you've heard it here. And then
You're on the line now.
Yeah, Joel just yelled haiku. I mean, I'm not even sure.
I think he was talking about being brief.
Oh, all right. I didn't know if that was related. He just yells haiku. So flash fiction, you can go to the page and really check it out. What are your thoughts on getting paid for beginner or inexperienced work versus going head-to-head with DC, Marvel, Dark
Before
Horse?
you go there, I'm going to have you repeat that. One quick question about the acknowledgments page. Like Buddy said, last year we ended up with some pages or some comics that were 8 pages plus a cover, some that were 8 pages with sort of an acknowledgement. So this year we will be asking for 8 pages, clear and present, and then a cover page. So your total submission for your comic should be 9 pages, but one of those should be a cover. It shouldn't have story on it. If you do want to put the title and credits and such things on the first page rather than the cover, that's your decision. But that will give us 9 pages per comic. And that extra page that's going to make up that spread will be the credit page or the intro page for each comic, just like we did last year. So we'll still have an even number of pages at 10, which sounds odd. You normally like to have divisions of 4, but we also have the forward, the afterword, and the table of contents, all these other things that sort of make up the different pieces of the book. So if you do have any questions about that, you can ping me or Ari or Buddy via email or on the forums. The questions for office hours will remain open. So if you have further questions, you can ask for there. Sorry, Buddy, go ahead.
No, don't ping me. Ping Ari and Aaron. I'm completely inconsistent.
You can
People were
ping
like,
him,
"Can I
but
have
he'll
10?"
just tell you the same thing I just told you.
But no, people will go like, "Can I have 10 pages?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't care."
Don't talk to Buddy.
But yeah, don't talk to me. I got overruled on that, and for good reason. So the question was about getting paid for your work, and I think it's a fair question. I think you have to recognize the economics of a commercial art form like this. If I'm a publisher, and I am a publisher, and I pay you for your work, I need to be able to then take that work after printing and publishing costs, after distribution costs, after the distributor's cost and the cover price profit. I need to make money back, or at very least break even. It's not easy. Now, when you go to a Dark Horse or you go to a Marvel, they will give you a page rate. Image does not. Image, you actually pay Image to publish your book. Not a lot of people realize that. You pay $3,000 to publish your book. It may be even more these days, but ultimately you either pay them up front or they just take the first $3,000. If you don't make $3,000 on your book, you owe them money. All right, so you're paying. But Image, the Image Eye is worth things. You get it up on the stands. A lot of people have a question when you're doing work at this level, should you get paid? Well, it's a fair question. It depends on what you're after. If you're after getting practice and getting your work out there and you're passionate about this and you want to be seen and you want your work out there, I'm always an advocate of practicing until you're at the point where somebody says, I can make money off of Aaron. And so I'm going to hire Aaron. And you have to think, whatever they pay you, sort of the back of the envelope is if they pay you $10 a page, they have to make 5 times that in order to reap a profit after all of the intermediaries take their cut. All right. So it is a tough business. I've seen people who are aspiring pros, failure to launch. They just won't do any work until they get paid. And then I've seen people who are passionate and like, let me do whatever I have to do what I have to do to break in. And then there's somewhere in between. I've worked with people, for example, on Midlife Crisis with Andy Siebert. We don't exchange any money. We both own 50% of the property Midlife Crisis. Whereas Apocalypse Boulevard, I was working with Donnie. He wanted to get paid. I own Apocalypse Boulevard 100%, and I paid Donnie. And that was the deal we worked out. Now, if you're going to do an 8-page story, it's rather ridiculous to even try to work out an economic thing. If you can't do 8 pages for spec to build your portfolio, you may want to rethink your career. I'm sorry, it's 8 pages. It's a nominal piece of work. If somebody were to say, can you do 80 pages? Well, okay, there's a different question. But 8 pages is a good way to get started. It's a good way to work out your chops, a good way to get noticed, and eventually work your way to that place where you want to be. And I'll give you an example. Marcelo, who's going to be joining us for one of our upcoming events, we met working on Richie Rich. I was already a paid writer, but I knew the publisher and I just waived my salary. I was like, I don't need to get paid to write Richie Rich. I love Richie Rich. Keep it, pour it back into the publishing. We've been friends. He was a guy at Wizard, but he ended up introducing me to Marcelo, who's getting paid, pennies on the dollar to what he was worth. Then he went over to IDW, was doing things like Back to the Future. And then all of a sudden, couple years in the field as an overnight success. It was like 4 or 5 year overnight success. All of a sudden he's at Marvel, and now he's got an exclusive. But he was willing to get that work out there in order to get seen and build up his portfolio and get good at his stuff. So my feeling is should you get paid? Yeah, in a perfect world, it will. But I always keep the one thing in mind, Aaron, and then I'll stop. If the publisher is making money off of your work, should you get paid? There's a good chance, right? If their margin is super, super slim and they're barely making it by, maybe, or maybe you can work something else out. The Richie Rich deal, I will tell you transparently, all I said to him was, look, just send me 200 copies of each issue that I write, because my kids were in middle school, and I was like, I want to just be able to hand them out. And they were like, no problem. So I waived my salary in my page rate to give away free comics of Richie Rich. It worked out beautifully for everybody. Did you have thoughts?
I did. So that's sort of the writing bit and very much comics. For art, I think it's very similar. Nobody's going to hire you as an artist if they can't see your work. And one of the things that I had to learn the hard way, not only getting my portfolio destroyed twice, but dropping my computer off the back of a truck, is if you don't have work, they don't consider you an artist. And so you can say, well, pay me and I'll work for you, but they'll say, what are you going to give me? You need to have something to show. And if you show them something that's subpar, they're not going to offer to pay you. These are not people I'm not talking about the people who come to you and be like, I really need you to design my logo for me for free for exposure. No. They're trying to get something for free. I'm talking about people who are going to continue to publish you, to continue to work with your stuff, who want to sell your product to make money.
Yeah.
You need to be able to show them what you're capable of doing. And so doing that, you might not be professional level yet. You might be better than amateur. You might be, better than my 4-year-old cousin. But I don't know that unless I can see it, And if you write something for one guy and you and that guy have a rapport and you make 1 million comics, great. If nobody's willing to buy them because either the art or the writing is not what they're looking for, you're not getting anywhere. So as an artist and as a comic book writer, I think too, you need to be able to throw yourself in the deep end with small bits and experience what it is to write with this guy and that guy and the other girl. And you need to be able to write with this group, and you need to see if you can do fantasy. You need to see if you can do Richie Rich and Marvel. You need to see if you can do Back to the Future. So it's better to get the experience on these small things. And while we're offering this community for free for everybody to come and learn, we're not asking anything for the people who get our stuff either, because and I hate to say it is exposure, but it's also experience. And as an artist, I think that starting off in an industry, if you don't have, like Buddy said, 10 pieces, if you don't have a portfolio in this industry, you're not going to get the job at Marvel. No matter how good your drawing is, you would have to be, Picasso. And I'm sorry, Picasso only comes around once in a generation. So.
And it is worth noting, and it's not a perfect science, but the internet has made this a lot easier. If you feel like there's a publisher and you feel like you might be exploited, you have to make the decision if that exploitation of your time is worth it for you. Like, sorry, there are some bad actors in publishing all over the world. And they might not return your original art, or they might promise that they're going to pay you and they're not going to. So you weigh that risk. The nice thing about the internet is you could look everybody else up, right? If you see there's somebody out there that seems to be getting complained about a lot, you can make a somewhat informed decision. You can go to the message board, you can ask other people and go, yeah, what do you think? And sometimes people will be like, I don't know, I wouldn't work with the guy. But then you might look at it and go, it's something to do. And it's up to you. It's really a personal decision, but I will tell you, honestly, I had done a lot of free writing and a lot of free web design in order to get my name out there and to build up my portfolio. It was my strategy. Yeah, good point, Ari. That was my strategy, and my strategy was to get my name out there, build relationships, and that's what led to my professional work. So you just have to decide what works for you. And if you think someone is going to exploit you and you don't want to be exploited, make the decision. But if you know that they're probably going to screw you over, but you're okay with it because you want to get that piece published, make the decision that's best for you. Only you could know what's going to be best for you. And I think having a community like this gives you an opportunity to ask other people and also Google them. That's a technical term.
Well, and also there's different times in people's lives, I mean, with COVID, with everything going on with the economy, I mean, some people might not be able to work on free things right now. Maybe they've got bills to pay and they need to get paid. So, you know what? That happens.
Sure.
Next year it might be different. You get that, gold mine job and you have some extra time. Now you can practice on the things you want to do differently.
Well, and also with COVID, this is time maybe that you work on the comic you've always wanted to work on.
Right.
You're like, you know what, I'm gonna do a webcomic. I'm gonna do a 3-panel strip every day. I'm gonna, whatever. Here's your opportunity. But if you only think about the financial part of it, you could end up stalling your career in a way that doesn't benefit you in the long term. So make the decision on a case-by-case basis what works for you. Next question. What's the best way? Oh, it says, what do you think as a 20-year veteran of the industry? As a 20-year veteran of the industry, is the best way to use the internet, comic book school, and other tools like Kickstarter, Indiegogo to get a comic book career not only started but become successful? I wish I knew. I'm not actually successful enough to know, but I will tell you, comic books, like almost any industry, is based on relationships. I had read years and years ago that like 89% of all jobs are gotten through networking. And I would say that the same is true in comics. Raw talent will get you so far. It'll get you that conversation, but building that relationship is important. And I would say that comic book school, right now we're percolating a community of people that will move together as a cohort. And some of you will move to the next level and then bring people up with you. The example of Kyle, who is, maybe here because he's done some anthology work and he's done some ash cans, and now he brought David in, and David and Kyle will go like this and maybe bring the next level of people up. There was a group of people who were in the Wizard message boards years and years ago who brought each other up, and a lot of those people came up together, and I was part of those people. So I think what you need to do is build that relationship. Now, the other thing you need to do is try to use social media. If you can, so Aaron knows I have a great passion for cars and stories with cars, which you see in 7 Days to Fame, you see in Apocalypse Boulevard, and I am forever trying to find other people who love the same thing. And so what I'm trying to do is connect with that audience. So when the next book comes out that I'm putting out, the audience that likes what I do is already ready and primed to know, yeah, I want that. So I use social media to stay in touch with people, let them know what my passions are. I share things all the time. But when I'm ready to announce something, and hopefully I will be announcing something soon, I will be able to tap into an audience that's already there and already has a relationship with me. And I think that that's one of the things. This is an opportunity that would just really just didn't exist until the real rise of social media. So I think people should utilize all the tools to build their own platform. If you go to a publisher, they're going to ask you how many followers you have on social media. That's part of the submission packet. I'm not kidding. So you need to build it up. And
well, they want to see if there's already interest, because that's marketing dollars they would have to invest if you don't. And if they already know where your interest lies, they can further that instead of starting from scratch. If they have to start from scratch, that's an investment some people might not be willing to make.
Yeah, and they have their own list of publicists and people and fans. But if they know that you already have a solid base of people that you can reach, and that those people are real, they're real, they've got they're responding, they're interacting, they can plug you into any number of tools to see how real your followers are. Did you buy them? Are they real? That's very easy in marketing
Analytics can
to
get
figure
very
out. Yeah.
complicated that way really quick.
Right.
But
You can
they
have
know.
100,000
They know
followers.
if you're faking. So
Yeah, they
don't
know
fake
if you're
it.
fake, and they know if they're fake ones. So yeah, it's better to build it organically. And I would also say that if you are an indie creator and you like something, share it out. take a picture of what you bought last week and share it out. Tell someone about what you're doing and say, check out this indie book, because all the ships in the harbor rise together. So if there's a great indie book and you think, wow, this deserves wider attention, let people know about it and let them know to go to their local comic shop and support their local comic shop and buy those books. So I think there's a responsibility, but also an opportunity.
And that goes back to your building networks.
Building networks and just, making
Supporting
friends.
each other.
Yeah, it doesn't it's not only about, work. It's like we make
No, but I
friends.
mean, you support them and they go, hey, that guy was really cool on sharing my book. I think I'll follow him. Or hey, he's shared my book and I like his book, so I'll share it too. It's not, it doesn't have to be quit for pro, but you make friends that way. And maybe you'll work with them someday. Or maybe they're like, hey, that was really cool of you to support my book. I totally want to give you one. Like, you become friends. It's a great way to be. So
It is, and that's good. Do we have them coming in, or should I go to the
yeah, I got one from Chris here. As a self-publisher, should you continue to work on a specific property, hoping that it will reach a larger audience, or is it safe to branch out and work on several titles and see what hits? This from our award-winning short story winner from our anthology last year in the Independent Creator Awards.
And my answer is potato. I don't think there's a right. Honestly, Chris, I don't think there's a right answer. I think, you have creators who, it's self-evident that's, Spawn, right? Self-evident, or The Walking Dead. Oh, yeah. But, if you look, they've tried other things, but sometimes you become so associated with a character the way Brian Pulido became, very much associated with Lady Death, or Billy Tucci with She, or Spawn with McFarlane, or Hellboy with Mignola. I don't think that it excludes your ability to try out other properties, but I'm more in favor of saying, what are you totally passionate about? So I'll go back to Apocalypse Boulevard. I love Apocalypse Boulevard. There's probably an audience out there that love fast cars, monsters, guns, and all the stuff that I have in Apocalypse Boulevard. So I'm going to keep working on this. I'm not going to go like, I'm also going to do a Harlequin romance, and I'm going to do a Christmas special. Like, I'm going to stay with this because I feel like this is what I want to be known for, and this is where I want my audience to grow. Is it a bad idea to spread yourself out and try different things? Not necessarily. Maybe something will hit that you don't expect. Sometimes, a band will put on one song on an album. They weren't even going to include it. I think of that band. What was that band? I Just Want to Fly. What was the name of that band? Not Smash Mouth. What was that?
You're asking the wrong person music questions.
Someone in the
You're not
audience.
your person.
That song, I Just Want to Fly. Anyway, they weren't even going to include it on the album, and they put it on, and it became one of their biggest hits. And I think one of the things that you have to do is think, is there a diamond in that rough, and should you put it out there? Sugar Ray. Thank you. Thank you, Alexander. You see that you asked the internet. The internet knows the answer. But I'm more in favor of finding that vertical, just saying, go with this, hit it hard, but also recognize at a certain point, maybe you got to let it go. You could keep hitting that you could keep hammering that nail and no one's buying it. All right, maybe you need to diversify a little bit. So I think you got to go by feel.
Yeah, and it's different for everyone, because I'm the kind of person that I'll work on something straight through till 3 a.m., 6 days in a row, and then wake up on the 7th day and be like, I can't look at that anymore. I have to do something else. So it depends on who you are. Just don't spread yourself too thin. If you have something you're passionate about, keep that the priority, but have something like a palate cleanser if you need it. You never know what will hit. There's people like, I always think of Jim Butcher. He did the Dresden series and everybody loved it, but his passion was this other fantasy project, and it never really took off. But he was like, by the time he'd done 13 Dresden books, he was like, screw it, I want to work on this other thing. So he did. And his fans were like, fine, we'll fricking wait for the next Dresden, but could you just hurry up? You know what? He did what he wanted to do. So
I agree. I can't look at the comments because everybody's a comedian in there. Like,
they're
making me
we
laugh.
are a comic book community, so.
But yeah, I think Chris, go first lead with what your strongest thing is, and the thing that you would want to live with for the rest of your life, and don't try to be all things to all people. Be to thine own self, be true, Chris.
Ooh, we're just throwing out quotes
A
today.
little bit Shakespeare there. Don't get you started because you'll do the entire Midsummer's Night's
Yeah, you
Dream.
know I will.
Yeah. Do you have another one, or should I pull one from the
Nope, go ahead. Pull one
queue?
from the list.
All right. All right. What do you see as the ultimate 5 to 7 year plan for comic book school going forward? Well, let me tell you, folks. Comic book
All right, could
school.
you repeat that just so we're sure we heard the question?
Yeah. What do you see as the ultimate 5 to 7 year plan for comic book school going forward? My intent with comic book school is to always create an accessible, dynamic resource that adapts to whatever medium is appropriate, to keep it free, and to keep it focused on both craft and business. But looking forward, and I look at this particular cohort of students right now, all of you on this call, I see this moving up to another level, right? And then this next level of education needs to become more sophisticated and relative to your learning needs and to your breaking in needs. Now, in a year or two, you as a cohort, as a student body currently, will continue to grow. I anticipate that student body helping at least some of them to educate the next level. But I do also see comic book school moving into different publishing verticals because of our passion. We certainly see the opportunity to expose current people with a traditional digital download, but we have been talking about the possibility of finding individual properties from our community and beginning to focus on their publishing plan in a more formalized way, where we talk about doing print publications that make it to the stands. Now, that is a long-term vision, but something that we think that we can start to put into place in the next couple of months. And then certainly I would like to continue, as many of you know, Comic Book School has been my personal publishing um, channel. But I think I need to get that thing clarified. The opportunity to publish a new how-to book is not far off, but I would also like to, for example, continue publishing Apocalypse Boulevard and Midlife Crisis, which would require perhaps a slightly different branding. So I see Comic Book School growing. I certainly would love to get people's input. Ari and Aaron are in the inside circle, and they have been continuing to give me feedback. But again, I would always like to continue to have a free and robust learning community and adapt to whatever the medium and the channels are. Continue to do free published to be a showcase for talent. Branch number 2, trying to find some key talent where we can continue to nurture them. And then my own publishing aspirations would be to continue, because as a writer, I still have stories that I want to tell.
Right.
So you did I miss anything? Because you're on the inside circle. You can see I'm careful about committing to too much.
I don't want to commit you to too much, but I wanted the community to kind of know that you're thinking about more than just one 8-page challenge every year. We had talked about keeping up the 8-page challenge and keeping up the community and the boards so that new people can come in and continue to learn and grow, but also helping people to maybe publish their first book, keeping your publications up because I know that feeds your creative soul and I wouldn't want to kill that ever. But also because we do have so many people in the community that are, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, maybe they're publishing their own thing or they're in other anthologies, helping people to understand what all of their options are, both as community members and as professionals come in and help us out more. We can be a talent pool, we can be a network connection, but we can also, get people the experience to start making comics and then start publishing comics. And from there, if you go on to Marvel, DC, if you make your own anthology, if you do, your own thing, you still have all of these connections, and we're still, a community and friends who, like you said, all people rise, all boats rise. Rob says it way better than me, but my point being that we continue to be a community, but we start to be, more than that. We start to be publishing. We start to be, we keep putting out your stories, which I think are really cool, by the way. And we put out stories of our own, not just sort of the the free 8-page anthology, but also, stories that really get people's feet under them in a published sense.
Yeah, I think there are certain people that have emerged from our own community that have either shown intellectual property in our anthology, which I think a lot of people can go, wow, that could be ongoing. Some
Yeah.
of it will be ongoing. We would like to be able to offer a helping hand to those people in an informal way. But then we've been talking about formalizing, a little bit like Dark Horse, they brought Concrete and they brought Hellboy and they brought certain properties, and then those flagship properties benefited everybody.
Right.
And that is a different type of contractual idea that we would like to
Yes.
explore this coming year. So we don't have anything solid yet, but I think that people should keep creating, keep raising their own profile. And
Well, and the other thing that helps with that, which we've called for volunteers a couple times, and people kind of go, well, but I think that just like the print publication thing I was talking about earlier, I think if you come on and you help with an edit and you help with, some of the website stuff, or you help with one of these live streams, you get to see kind of what goes on in the background. I did kind of have a side conversation with Dave a little earlier about, like, if you want to write, but if you needed to self-publish, or if you need to publish, it's good to know a little bit about that, because then ahead of time when you're getting screwed, ahead of time, why the dates are what they are. It gives you a little bit more background in these sort of learning stages of knowing what goes on the other side of things. You can sit in a dark room or just talk to your writer or your artist and do just your thing. But it's a very limited education, and we're comic book school. We offer the education of comic books, making comics, creating comics, and that means producing it. That means publishing it. That means a lot of other things. And who knows? You might decide that you don't ever want to go back to your retail job at FedEx, and you want to print things at a big print house and do your comics continued as a hobby. You won't know that until you try. So there's lots of other places in comics that you can get your shoe in the door, you can get your foot in the door and say, well, I might not have the greatest comic ever, but Marvel, I've worked as a producer or an editor or a publisher at the indie comic house over at Comic Book School, and so I know all of that, and I could get in and talk to 4 of your artists, and in 2 years be your top guy.
Yeah, and a final thought on that. I mean, that's how James got connected to First Comics Publishing.
Mm-hmm.
I introduced him to the publisher Ken Levin, and then he started working. You and Ari are perfect examples of people who stepped forward and were like, "We want to volunteer more." Now you're on a masthead.
Yeah,
Crazy. Crazy. You look at Bolu and you look at Chris and you look at Jared. This is our next team of emerging creators. And what's great about it is, and Bolu wrote the wonderful intro and bio for Jamal Eigel. And now he has a direct connection with Jamal. He's emailed him. Jamal has responded. Now they have an open dialogue. They can either email, or the next time, and I think they both live in Manhattan. There's no question that you could be like, hey, hey, let's go meet for coffee or a beer somewhere. That's what this is all about. So we do want to encourage people to get involved, come forward. Don't just be along for the ride, but be there and be a participant.
Right.
And to quote Hunter S. Thompson, buy the ticket, take the ride. Right?
You are full of quotes tonight.
I am full of something. Anyway, we are at the 1 hour point, and we always try to keep this on time. So for the community who joined us, thank you so much. We are so glad to have you. I'm going to encourage everybody to subscribe to the YouTube channel for Comic Book School. We have a lot of different programming that's coming up, so keep an eye out for that. I'd like to thank Rob Anderson, who helps make this possible, helping engineer in the background. He is our secret weapon. He rarely even pops up to take any credit, but he sure does do a lot for us.
He taught me everything I know about StreamYard. Oh, and Meredith.
And to my wonderful co-host, Erin, you always bring as much as I need and more to all of these events that we do together. So I'm deeply grateful for all you do. So thank you very much.
Thanks, man.
And thank you to everyone who joins me and Erin and Ari and the whole group on this journey. It is a learning experience. Despite having 25 plus years of comic book professionalism in my background, I still learn something every day from the community. So thank you guys. I look forward to seeing you next week for our upcoming show with Jamal Eigel and Tom Pyre as they talk about breaking into indie comics like Ahoy Comics. So be sure to join us next week to talk to Jamal and Tom. I guarantee you it will be funny. They are both very, very funny people. And also go to your comic shop. Please go buy some comics that are created by Jamal, and especially if you can find something by Ahoy Comics, the comic by Jamal and Tom. It's called The Wrong World. It's fantastic. It's super. It's just super fun. Please go and support the creators who are taking the time to do free programming for us. So thank you, everybody. We will see you next week, and keep making comics.
Just in case you have any other questions, or if you want to do this again, we do try to keep you guys as updated as we can. We do have a community meeting every third Sunday of the month, I think. Double check your calendar. I keep getting that confused. But you can always come by the live stream and ask questions. And if you do want to be part of the Comic Book School Council of the Willing and learn more about what goes on in the background, check us out on the forums. Have a nice night, everybody.